Hi, I'm so pleased to have everybody here. My name is Felicia Rubenstein. I'm the founder of HAYVN, this co-working space that you are sitting with today. And we're really pleased to have discussion today. I just want to tell you 2 seconds about HAYVN. HAYVN is a co-working space that I founded 6 years ago. So we're coming up on a 6-year anniversary. And we focus on 5 pillars here. We focus on health and wellness, sustainability and social impact, entrepreneurship.
Marketing.
Female entrepreneurship. Empowering female entrepreneurs, right? And we, all our programming is all combined in this. So we have different areas that we dive deeper into. And you'll see different events happening based on that. So for example, on April 30th, we have a health and wellness summit where we have panelists and we have 40 vendors that are going to be displaying their wares here with Reiki and all sorts of healthy creams and tarot card reading, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, and we have some great food. So it's from 4 to 8 on April 30th. All are welcome. So, and bring friends. We also do this for the sustainability area, and that's in December. We have a holiday pop-up event with sustainable products. So it's really fun, and we hope that you all will attend that. If you want to know anything more about HAYVN, happy to give a tour later on. We have a calendar of events that we post online and here. So the May calendar has just come out. And just a little bit diving deeper, Lisa's going to talk about it much more, but sustainability is like in my heart. And when I started HAYVN, I applied for a B Corp and got a B Corp, which I was thrilled about with the help of Alexis, my lawyer. It was a lot of work, and it's just about doing business as a force for good. The building here, we have solar panels, we do composting, everything was, in our space was built with this in mind. And I just am thrilled to dive deeper into this and be part of the community at large in this world. So I'm going to turn this over to Lisa, who's been by my side helping put together the whole sustainable program, and I'll let you talk a little more about it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So, hi, everyone. Welcome again. I'm Lisa Miniter. We're delighted you're here. I think what for sure will be a very dynamic conversation on what's called the ever-evolving sector of build and design trends. And with that, I also feel the need to say, because most of us are in Fairfield County, tonight you're in for a very rare conversation, not just conversation, but guidance and questions, because you don't find this often beyond just Fairfield County in Connecticut. So we're very delighted to have this kind of session on behalf of HAYVN. And with that, as it relates to, and I feel the need to say Fairfield County, if you're not aware of it, but Fairfield County is actually the leader in sustainable initiatives. And what I mean by that is, if you're not aware, we index double when it comes to EV ownership. We also index high with sustainable related solar panels, heat pumps, and other adjacent spaces. However, we don't really still have a voice of sustainability, and hopefully sessions like this tonight will bring out not just memorable, interesting conversations, but also interaction and questions that will help you either on the professional side or of course on the residential side with where your interests lie. And so the theme is called Build and Design Trends That Transform Nature in the Built Environment. By extension of that, also integrating interior design and what's called low carbon building materials or sustainable building materials. And with that, we will delve shortly into the program. Each of our panelists, by the way, have a presentation. So in terms of questions, we would prefer to kind of wait toward the end. However, we are really based on being very interactive. What is useful for you? And so if you do have some questions, please don't be shy. We do encourage that. And I think that for now, then we will delve into that. But I also want to introduce Jeffrey Stackhouse. He is with Renewable by Anderson, and he is out of Fairfield County in Westchester County. He is the marketing director and our sponsor tonight. And so I'd like to first introduce Jeffrey before we delve into our program. And so Jeffrey, please come up and say a few words.
Everybody, thank you. It's a pleasure. Just a little about myself. I'm actually grew up here in Fairfield County. I grew up in New Canaan. I did not fly in from Minnesota, hence where our factory is in Minnesota. But yeah, just wanted to give you guys a little bit, I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard in our mailbox, seen us on TV, etc. Nobody's buying anything tonight. But I like to educate people on kind of like where we came from, because people hear the Andersen name. And we are, Andersen Corp is the oldest window corporation in America, started in 1904, still kind of family owned and really operated. And kind of where we came in, when you say renewal by Andersen, we came around in the mid-90s. When Andersen realized that new construction windows were great, needed to have a replacement option, right? Everybody in here probably has a home that's anywhere between 10 years and maybe 100 years old. And so Andersen was like, we need a subdivision. We need a better product that's high performance, that's not a new construction application. So Renewal by Andersen came in. And so what they figured was all these wood cuts, waste cuts, etc. And we're now going back to the 90s. I always like to tell people, this isn't like yesterday or the trend that's now renewable, is they designed a method of combining a proprietary polymer and wasted wood cuts in the 90s to make what they call FiberX, which is what our windows are made of. It's got, I don't know, 35 different patents on it. Nobody else has this technology. Our stuff's made to order. And the nice thing is, by being made to order, we don't take up shelf space. We design, we have less waste. I tell people too, all of our factories, we just launched 2 new factories. One's actually in Georgia, and they just expanded one in Minnesota, both of which run 100% on renewable energy. So, you know, it's a factory that's well over 500,000 square feet, servicing the entire US, runs almost on 0 emissions. So it's pretty cool. So to give you a little bit of background about it. And you know, we're offering people, you know, again, these are solutions for older homes that are inefficient. I tell everybody too, like cost of energy, come now it's gone up. So part of what we offer to people is these consultations that you see on television. We can really highlight where inefficiency are. So aside from that, we like the design of things, like where you're losing money, right? A closed window could be fine because it's not getting air inside the house, but you could have seal fitter, which is causing draft and causing the sun exposure and the cold, and that's raising your AC. So these are all things we like to tell people when we come inside the house, aside from just selling you windows. So with that said, I just want to say, if you guys have any questions for us, we service all of Fairfield County and actually Westchester. So we are locally down here in Stamford. We've got a 25,000 square foot warehouse. Everything is done there aside from window production, which is done out in Minnesota. So when you use us, you're using someone in your backyard. All of our teams, including our president, is local. So just kind of put a familiar face there. And if anybody has any other questions, we're here at the end, giving a little extra something if anybody wants to get a free window inspection at their house and kind of explore what options are gonna look like. So thank you so much for having me.
You're
Thank
quite
you.
welcome. Great, so I think we'll start then with just delving into the program. And what we'll do, I think is best is if each of you could just kind of tell us a bit about your backgrounds, how you came into sustainability, and of course, what you're currently doing. We'll start from there, and perhaps Rebecca, if you could go
Sure.
first, and
Yeah,
let's start that way.
sure. I'm Rebecca Sterling. I grew up in Connecticut and England. I have a practice in Greenwich, a small practice. I can talk about that in my presentation. Licensed architect, and I started in the field of sustainability. Actually, in college, I went to CU Boulder, and the program there is very environmentally focused. And at the time, I was curious about some of the alternative building materials and strategies that were available at the time. It was the nineties, and we're talking like straw bale construction. So I got my hands dirty in straw bale, and that was the beginning of really the passion that I have today. So, it's translated quite a bit, but, that's about it.
Great, thank you.
My name is Heather McWilliam. I'm a certified interior designer. I practice in Wilton. I got my start in sustainability really sort of from my own curiosity. So, I've always worked on projects that were involved with getting towards that LEED accreditation, and I'm envious of my colleagues here that have been able to do those accreditations, because I think everyone should be thinking that's the goal, to get sustainable, to be passive, to do that, because the reality is every single thing that we use in our environment affects ourselves and each other. So I have my own practice for 22 years now, and it's in predominantly residential. So I've put a few projects up here as well, as Rebecca has, so I'll share those tonight. And what ASID as a professional organization is doing to educate our designers on what's next and what we should be following.
My name is Dov Feinmesser. It's great to be here this evening. I am originally born and raised in Israel, of all places, where my first interest in sustainability started from, although at the time I didn't really understand or know what that was, or understand that it was sustainability in a form that I was interested in. I knew I wanted to be an architect from a very young age. I'm now a registered architect in Connecticut, and a LEED accredited professional. And so when I went to college, not that dissimilar, to do my degree in architecture, that's where I really learned that what I found so fascinating back in Israel was basically what is known generally as vernacular architecture. And vernacular architecture, by its very nature, has a lot of sustainable elements to it. And that's where my interest in sustainability grew. It was also a big part of my undergraduate degree. And then I practiced for a few years in Europe and in Canada, and ended up here for graduate school. So I've been here ever since. I now work for Newman Architects in New Haven. Newman's been around for 60 years. We just celebrated 60 years last year. And I am the director of sustainability for Newman, which is a new position. As a firm, we've always been about people-centric architecture, about creating spaces for people not just to live, but to thrive in. And so, of course, wellness and sustainability, or I should say, of course, blended into that very naturally. And we've always done projects that have won awards, including LEED, Passive House. But it wasn't until recently that we finally came to an agreement that we needed to really codify it into our design process in a clear way, so that we could also track what we were doing, look at data, and understand how we can use and reuse ideas that we had previously put in place, what was working well, what wasn't, to really inform our designs moving forward. And so as Director of Sustainability now, I'm more involved in thinking holistically about all the work we do and how it contributes and how sustainability contributes to it, as opposed to on a project by project basis.
Excellent. Well, thank you to all of you. Well, I think that at this point, let's start with Rebecca. And if you could share your presentation, she's going to have something called the beginning to end. And this is going to be on how you bring all the different elements together from a design standpoint. And I think if you could maybe bring that up, it's right behind you now. Or do you want to switch seats, of course? Yes.
If I could just move the chair.
Yes.
Yeah, just for everyone to. Let me see, make adjustments. Okay. That's better. Thank you. All right. I feel like I'm gonna. It's this one. This is cool. What am I doing? Okay. This one.
The big.
Okay, the big one?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, here we are. See if this works. No. The big one, right? There we go. Oh, now I have to go back.
There you go, I did it for you.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is who we are. We're a small firm. Unfortunately, you can't see Lawrence's eyes there, but he's up there. He's a sweetheart. There are 4 of us in my office. In total, we're all, we have 2 licensed professionals. And interior designer, architect as well. We all share a vision of sustainability and people. We focus on mostly high-end residential and light commercial projects. I'm licensed in New York and Connecticut, so those are where most of our projects take place. About 20% of the work that we do is new build, 80% renovation work, and about 75% of that includes interiors. So that is both furniture and finishes, et cetera. So full service. Might have to have you do it. Thank you. So is there a way to get rid of the bottom screen, or is that not an option? Okay, we'll go with that. So, I think every firm, in particular, the smaller firms like my own, we define sustainability, differently. In our firm, in our team, we define it sort of in 3 different, sectors. One is, or concepts. One is just the general idea of preservation. And that is that really the most sustainable building is the one that's already there. We really love doing renovation work. We love working with buildings that have been around for a long time. I was born in England, as I said, or lived in England, but I was born there as well and spent my summers there growing up. So I have a very sort of strong feeling around preservation and historic architecture vernacular as well. So in addition to that, just this general, very simple idea behind passive strategies. The first question we always ask when we get a new project is where is south? So we're always looking at how we can orient the users to Mother Nature effectively, and bring in natural daylight. And then also just connecting the user to the exterior. And then finally, this is the field that we really landed on and we made a lot of traction, and that is material health. We look a lot at the sort of finishes and things within the building, the stuff that people touch and look at and use every day and interact with every day. And that material health is really the impact of building materials on both the environment and on humans. We are a signator of the AIA Material Pledge, which I can talk about independently. But that's also been an important part of our practice. Let's see, can I go back? Here we go. So our process. What we do when we have a project, we basically look at it in truth the same every single time, which is that we look at the sort of, we call it the DNA. We use that term a lot in our practice. So the project has its own inherent DNA. It's what is the client, their requirements. It might be the project brief. It's just a real sort of list of what the needs are for the project from a programmatic standpoint, but also some of the general values that might be inherent to the client or the family. And then we look at the building DNA. So that is really, what is this building all about? What is it bringing to the table? What do we really want to preserve and celebrate? And it's both material and spatial qualities of the building. And then we translate that into some kind of a sustainable strategy. So that would be a material strategy and a spatial strategy. Why do materials matter? For many reasons. One, I think a lot of you know this data that the building sector accounts for roughly 37%. I'm sure that number changes a little bit here and there, but of the global CO2 emissions. That's a lot. That's both operational carbon and embodied carbon. Of that 37%, 11% is our materials. Materials account for 11% of that 37%. So it does matter. And really for the architect or designer, we play a critical role in the process and what gets built and what gets used, implemented, in that we are really the ones who make the decisions in the specifications. we do the research, we are the ones who present options to clients, and ultimately, we're the ones who tell the contractor to use the materials. We also have a lot of responsibility and power behind vendor transparency. I think we can, I've often called different vendors and have asked for certifications, transparency in various different product materials. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. When we put that kind of pressure on a company, they start to scratch their heads a little bit, and it makes them, holds them accountable as well. So I think as an architect and designer, we have a critical role in this ecosystem of material health. In the implementation, also inspiring the proprietors as well. And then engaging clients, I think for materials or material health is really, we call it the low hanging fruit, but it's also something that's really, I think it's very accessible to clients. It's really, they really enjoy touching and seeing the products. They like to be part of the decision making. There's also a narrative behind it, something that they can talk about with their, either it's their company or, the employees or clients of their own, or it's their friends and family. It makes it much more interactive. And then if you are interested as a design professional, there's so many resources and they just keep becoming more and more sort of accessible and out there. I listed some here. Healthy Material Lab in New York City, that's Parsons School of Design has a fabulous library that you can access, and they also have a lot of online information. Great resource. There's also the HBD Collaborative. The AIA has a tremendous amount of information. So there's many more, but those are just three to start. And then I just threw this in there as a graphic. It's really simple and dumbed it down, but I just wanted to show, like, you can see how much in the world of finishes and fit out, embodied energy, the carbon footprint of different materials, partitions, floor finishes, furniture, ceiling, those are, it matters. Like, it's a good significant amount of decision-making that we can impact.
I have a question in terms of, this is still very much a niche sector, as you know. When you mentioned the contractor, is there much of a challenge getting sustainable focused contractors in the area? I mean, I know of one, but I assume they have to be sustainable focused, or maybe they don't, but they just take your direction.
I think for, yes, for some of if you're talking about some very unique, something to do with the thermal envelope itself,
Okay.
the building envelope, but when it comes to floor finishes, tile, some of these really, they're more, it's much more accessible, and most contractors I found are willing to test and try and
Okay.
I have not had any pushback from.
Yeah, just wondering if there were many that were actually focused on that, but. It's not.
No, not that I'm sure there could be. I don't think we're a big enough practice to have that kind of
Yeah.
exposure, but
Okay.
I think it's a good question though. Okay, so are we here now? Yeah, so I thought the best way to see this, how this works, was just to walk you through a project. This is a dental practice we did, and we started the project in 2020, so at the very beginning of the pandemic. So just to kind of go back to that slide that I showed before, this concept of the project DNA, we were approached by a team of doctors, 4 doctors that had an existing practice in the Flatiron neighborhood. They had an expanding practice, so they went through this rebranding and found a new location for a second office. And they really wanted to focus on their original values from their very successful practice. And those values were, they had a very unique relationship with their patients. One that was very honest and open. They treated them like family. They also spent more time with our patients than their colleagues did. And that was important to them. And a lot of that was just to do with helping them feel comfortable and talking them through procedures, et cetera. And then the other element was that they really understood dental wellness is a holistic space. And they were clear about this idea of having their patients feel comfortable from the minute they walked in to the minute that they left, and throughout their experience in the space. So the new office was on the West Village, right on the water, close to the water. The unique nature of the site was that there was a lot of southern and western exposure. The adjacent buildings were quite low, so they had the majority of the ground floor plan, the first floor, ground floor. So it was and the building itself was a historical building, was built in the 1900s. It was originally a manufacturing building. So when we first got there, we were really struck by just this massive open space with these beautiful fluted cast iron columns, the original columns, and soaring ceilings, ceiling height. And we were just struck by how beautiful the columns were and how open the space was. We also loved the brick, of course. So we just looked at basically how can we preserve the columns, the brick, the concrete floors. The checker floor is actually just a painted, it's the original concrete floor, which was painted with the checkerboard. So our first intuition was to stack all of the exam rooms on the exterior on this perimeter with this gorgeous sunlight that was pouring in through these massive windows. So the patient experience is one where you're sort of drenched in sunlight. And then the first impression, you walk in, you have this waiting room, and it was an opportunity for us to try to pull as much of that daylight into the waiting room as possible. So you sort of start your experience bathing in this natural daylight. So we were interested at that point in finding some kind of again, this is going back to the passive strategy, a partition that could really sort of capture that daylight. So we looked at polycarbonate as an option. It had many different great qualities, but it did also kind of reflected this idea of translucency and honesty, also privacy, because it was translucent. There was this this idea that, you know, the patient's privacy was of the foremost importance to the dentist in the practice, and many different valuable sustainable elements to the polycarbonate partitions, mainly that they were lower carbon footprint than and the drywall partition, et cetera. So we worked with a commercial dual guard, and it was you'll see some pictures at the end. Then again, we kind of dove and latched onto this idea of honest materials that just, they are what they are. They're not trying to be something else. So wood is wood, concrete is concrete. We found this great product in the Netherlands called Plexwood, which is basically a veneered sandwiched product, a very stable wood product, sustainably forested wood, carbon neutral process, no VOCs, no waste in the manufacturing process, also fire rated partition, and C2C cradle to cradle certified. So this was allowed us to bring in some warmth to the space, and we also really loved the sort of striped nature of it. And then again, kind of going back to this idea of like honest materials, we really wanted to celebrate the original concrete floor. So we stripped that of the paint and patched it as we could. And then introduced what's called Nora, which is an interface product. It's a rubber flooring made of natural rubber. And we brought those into the exam rooms. It's a healthcare type friendly product. And it's again, natural rubber, which is a renewable resource, C2C certified, et cetera. And we used a color that was similar to the concrete, so it felt like it was part of the overall floor. And then finally, this is the final product. I know I'm rushing through this, but this is the front, street front. So this is what it looks like when you're approaching, the space. This is your first impression. You can see these are highlighted here, in case you're wondering what they look like in real life. And then this is the actual lobby. We had a designed a custom a reception desk, which was like in a boomerang shape. And the space was felt like you were sort of in a cloud, so to speak. And then you can start to see as soon as you sort of turn the corner outside of the lobby, the reception lobby, you see one of the columns, which sort of orient the users, the patients as they're moving through the space. And then this is the corridor. You can see this is just taken from both ends. On the left, if you look at the slide on the left, the rooms on the right, you can see the daylight coming through. And then those are the exam rooms. You can see them again on the right side. The polycarbonate was the doors. We chose the sliding doors, make the partitions actually movable. The patients could choose whether or not they wanted the partitions open or closed during their procedure. Some actually like them open. And there is also a sound quality. There's they have an acoustic property to them as well, which is helpful. And then this is one of the exam rooms to kind of give you a sense of how we sort of carried on this sense of lightness in the color palette as well. The Nora rubber flooring on the floor as well. And then just the relationship between the dental chairs and the windows. So, and then it's kind of hard to see, but this is a polycarbonate panel here as well. So we have this between each exam room, so light could pass through from one to the other. And that is it. So.
Wow, thank you.
Was the light brilliant? Yes, we worked hard on that. It's a popular bite. It's an easy sell. Great bite.
But stuck in here earlier.
You put those in too. You never know.
I'm curious, by the way, was there anything it's after the fact with, after you finished, but any kind of comments, satisfaction from this extraordinary environment, especially for a dental office? Did they share any of that?
Yeah,
with you?
absolutely. It's really like, I mean, the reason why I'm showing this is because it's very successful. And the patients just really love it, and the doctors and the staff love it. It's just a very bright light, very, has a sort of Zen quality to it. Some of the things I didn't show, but it was part of the design. They have a diffuser in their HVAC system, so they do have their own scents that was made for the practice. So there was an interest in engaging all the senses. So there was and there's also there are hidden speakers buried in the actual drywall partitions, so you don't actually see the source of the sound, but there's they had a strong interest in having music as part of the experience as well.
A vibe for a dental office.
Yeah.
It's not like a
There's a whole
hotel, what a
vibe.
hotel would do.
So it's kind of this wellness thing. So it was, I mean, it's the clients were really great to work with, and they, it has been, it's wonderful, and it's held up pretty well, and it's nice to go back. Yeah,
That's for sure.
so.
Any other questions?
How, the petitions that you showed, are they, I'm just wondering, like, very expensive, more expensive than normal, or is it the other way because it's sustainable and?
I think it was, you know, think about the steel framing, light gauge framing, light gauge steel framing, drywall, paint, etc. It was basically comparable in the end. Many benefits is that they snap together. It's basically a tongue and groove type system. And it's very easy to work with. Just has a track, bottom and top track, and so it was quick. You know, it basically
It's soundproof, you said the sound.
it has a remarkably high acoustic value to it, but not quite the same as if you had a partition that was insulated per se, but better than glass or you know. So in general, it was not a hard sell for this client.
And you were saying that was the wall in between?
The partition?
Yeah, the partitions were in between each of the exam rooms, correct?
No, there was just one area, there, it was,
Oh, one area closer to the wall.
yeah, the partitions were, the polycarbonate basically wrapped the reception room. And then, each exam room had a polycarbonate sliding door. And then there was also a small narrow slot between each, exam room, that, allowed light to pass through. Not every exam room had a window. There was actually one that did not. So we, in theory, tried to bring the light into all, exam rooms, yeah.
Do they make doors like that too?
The polycarbonate,
Right.
you can, you just, there's a frame system effectively, which is an extruded aluminum frame. So they do have, the capacity to make the, swing door. Duo Guard is the name of the company that we used, so they, and everything is, for the most part, custom. The panels are not, they're just, but they can custom make basically anything you want, so, that is definitely an option. Yes.
Were you responsible for custom designing or sourcing the dental chairs themselves, and what goes into that research and stuff?
That's a good question. We did not. The dentists had a consultant that they worked with for the millwork, and for the chairs, and, a lot of the, it's a very sort of specialized technology. And we worked with them on colors and such, but they were the ones who chose, and worked with a consultant on that, the equipment, which, yeah, just definitely not my skill set. So, yeah.
Anyone else? No? Okay, well, thank you again.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Very impressive.
I think it's the big one, although, yes.
Okay, well, if I have any.
Yeah.
Okay, so, when Lisa approached me about, speaking tonight, what we talked about was what ASID is. So some of you are designers, some of you are architects, some of you are door specialists, windows and door specialists. So ASID came into being about 50 years ago. It's 50 years this year. They started, because they wanted to, have designers who were specifying, and as you can see, you know, Rebecca, you're a great example. You know, you're really creating all these decision-making, you know, choices for your clients. And they decided you're being educated by your designer, and the designer should be educated. So one of the things I thought would be helpful for tonight was to show everybody their trends outlook for 2025. So every year they come out with the trends, and so just sort of communicating with everybody this is what they're seeing in the trends, what people are looking for or asking for, and what designers are finding are important to share with their community. Because this is smaller, I'm gonna do like a little quick overview. So, a circular economy, that's awareness of the carbon footprint on, products you're specifying, upcycling materials, adaptive reuse, and, waste reduction practices. And when we talk about circular economy, cradle to cradle was something Rebecca mentioned, it's thinking about each of the elements in your project that are being affected, and taking these things into consideration. Technological integration, we all know smart home systems are important, to everyone today. AI-driven, customization, energy efficient solutions, these are the things that people are asking for. Resilient design, adaptive to climate extremes, flood resistance, energy independent systems such as solar. And then what this is, the second part of the slide is showing is the past 24 years, just how much it has increased in extreme weather conditions. I mean, just the color, red alone shows you how much it's affected us. One of the things that they show in the smaller type is back in September of 2023, Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, it destroyed 70,000 homes, and it's still going on now. And just this year with California with their wildfires, I don't know how many tens of thousands of homes have been destroyed. So we can't imagine how many years it's going to take for them to recover from that. So let's see. So talking about the circular economy, through the recent research, what they're showing is that initially architecture was considered to be the larger carbon footprint. Now they're saying the reality is that architecture and interior design is probably on par with one another. And the reason that has been acknowledged is because they realize, yes, there's a large carbon footprint initially with the build of the architecture, but the interiors could be repeated and or renovated many times over from that point. So if you have a 50-year-old building and you change it 10 times, you change it 5 times, that carbon footprint is times whatever that initial investment and carbon footprint was. So one of the mantras, which I think we all have been hearing and thinking about, is reuse, recycle, and repurpose. And that's, as a designer, we're seeing all of that on a regular basis. When you make a choice, how can you reuse or, what's in your existing environment? You mentioned it with things like those beautiful columns, Rebecca, for example, or the brickwork or existing materials, and revitalize, repurposing them or making them current for people to feel like they've really made a good design choice, but we're not making as much of a carbon footprint change. I think that one of the things I wanted to say is, we want to kind of communicate that we're stewards of our planet. I said that a little bit, before when we first started talking. The most difficult part, I think, is acknowledging, but to our clients who need to hear and understand this, as design professionals, making them aware, educating them, and bringing them along with you to make those better choices. I think that as a designer myself, I feel like every day I'm thinking about that, but your client is not. Your client is saying, I want you to make it beautiful. And so, the steward of the plant sounds so big, but yeah, we're all, a small, minute part of the stewardship. Residential clients, from my own experience, and I think what's been communicated through ASID is really, residential clients want to use less energy regarding their systems, but they also need to understand best practices.
So, an example is soft goods, again, reiterating, Rebecca said it, fabrics, wall coverings, floor coverings, upholstery. These are all common elements in all of our environments, and people think about those things, but, they might not think about it the same way we do with what they're made of, where they're coming from. The term microplastics is so relevant today. And what is, the most sought after low carbon furnishing, that was, part of this, circular economy slide, heating and cooling systems. And then people are balancing selections like stone, wood, ceramics, making those choices of companies that are having best practices using recycled water for, big picture level, things like that. Lighting and electricity, everyone seems to be very aware of because of efficiency with lighting fixture selections. But again, I think Gen Z, as well as all of us, are coming along to, well, how can we repurpose that existing light to be LED and not create a whole new fixture, not create, increase the carbon footprint of those, and getting back to the reuse, recycle, repurpose comment. The designer's challenge I mentioned too was, balance whether to keep those existing things or replace what happens, with those existing products. Again, not the easiest conversation, but we often find clients recognize the value in donations on the residential level. So for me personally, every project, when we redo a kitchen, that kitchen gets donated. So there's a place in Bridgeport called Restore. It's Habitat for Humanity. People get rid of their beautiful kitchens all the time. They go and get donated countertops, whatever can be, salvaged. Let's see, slide number 4. Multifamily residential. So, the general comment that, sort of, mimics what's been saying and been said in the slide is all generations have turned to this type of living to be more eco-conscious. Energy Star appliances, smart locks and thermostats, a simplified lifestyle and a smaller footprint. That's, we're seeing that, exponentially grow, and part of that is people do want to live simpler. So, I think that that's easy for us to see why that's happening. Education. So I just there's a conference coming up in Las Vegas, so I thought I would just put the slide up for those of you who get to travel and want to educate yourself as a tradesperson. This is a great opportunity to see a lot of product and people, and companies that are doing the right thing. These are a few examples that I pulled, that are companies that are, local to me that I use as to specify products. Our house, they made a commitment to donate money toward, when they create their products, towards sustaining the rainforest, or maybe I shouldn't say rainforest, but 54,000 acres, I think it is, in Indonesia. So they want to do the right thing. Green Row, they sustainably source all their products. They're an offshoot of, bigger corporation. That's another good example that's online. Net zero. So Material Bank, I'm not sure why this is backwards, I just realized, but so they made a commitment to be net zero by 2040. And what they do is they sample, if for those of you who don't use them, they sample from, I don't know how many hundreds of partners, and all of them are sustainably conscious, and they want to market and bring people together to get their samples, but not increase the carbon footprint of doing this. This is a residential project that I did here in Connecticut. You can see where the scaffolding is on the left. That was the original structure. We did a phase 1 where it was a garage addition on top of the existing footprint. This is the back side of the house, the original. We tried to use natural materials. You can see a lot of masonry that's local to the area. Traditional cedar shingles, things of that nature. And basically, instead of taking the whole house down, we gutted the interior. It was a series of like 4 different additions over, I don't know how many years now it was. And you can see from the floor all the way up, it was a little scary for the client, but we had everything shored up and we transitioned it into the double gable front, an extended porch. And on the back, we did the same thing. We extended the porch. We tried to use, as many sustainable materials as possible. An example, now Kebony is, a material that they are using to have long-term use. Just one company for an example. Let's see, this is the finished interior. We used reclaimed beams, reclaimed wood on the ceiling. Again, local masonry. When we did the floating stairs, I had in mind that we should just use the glass as, considered a more recycled material. This is brand new, so just the finishing stage. Progress. Oh. I think I need a little support here, maybe.
Good, now working? No, if I go back. I'm going into your presentation, Bill, I'm sorry. Okay, so, anyway, using natural materials, and this is a long time developer client of mine, and they also had other properties where they reused their, the current or existing, I should say, industrial buildings and renovated the interior core and took time to make sure that they did things as sustainably as possible. And I'm just going back to this because, what I tried to do for most of their furnishings is when I was saying reuse, repurpose, and recycle. These are chairs that got recovered, I thrifted a number of things for them, so. The Shaw carpeting, Shaw as a company, Shaw Contract does a really great job in being sustainable, so I made sure to ask them to up their game and use them for their flooring materials. So I think I'm all set, if anybody has any questions.
No.
So I'm gonna,
You wanna switch places?
I'm okay.
Just have any questions for?
Yeah.
Sure. So, the developer that you work with,
Mm-hmm.
so, is he a sustainable focused developer?
I wouldn't say he's sustainably focused. I think I brought him along and with the architect that I worked with, I don't know if you would know, Ray Sullivan, but
Yeah.
he, we asked them to step up to do some of those, to make some of those choices. I think it comes down to being practical to be on candidates, it's about cost, So for them, they decided that they've been building in the area for 50-ish years and they wanted to do something right. So they made a conscious choice when they were building to do those things.
And what's that building being used for?
It's a combination of rentals. So it's near Quinnipiac. So there's Quinnipiac students there, there's retirees. Rooftop with a common grill area. It's supposed to be for, more commercial use, but it hasn't taken off, which I'm surprised. It's an interesting market up there.
Hasn't quite caught up to that area,
Yeah,
the Amazon warehouses, but it's
exactly.
coming, I think, it's a matter of time.
Yeah,
I mean, they invested a ton of money and time just south of 91 there on that portion of Washington, so I think it's.
absolutely. It's coming. Yeah.
I know we've been doing some working with you and they're very interested in expanding.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, North Haven's really growing, yes.
Things like tile and flooring, if they're sustainable, are they a lot more expensive than other materials? Cause like, I know I've checked out tile. That's like fire clay tiles are sustainable and they are so expensive.
Mhm.
So, you know, I'm just curious, are there ones that are equally, expensive or not so much more expensive as well?
I think it depends on what you're looking for. So like, if you said, you saw a beautiful marble mosaic, they might have good sustainable practices, you know, they recycle all their water, they reuse every single piece of stone, they're very thoughtful and mindful, and maybe their labor costs are more because of that, you know, and it's more expensive anyway. But I think a lot of the ceramic companies, the bigger companies, they all know how to do things very efficiently. And so it's a research. So I think as design professionals, constantly looking for that next great source where they're making better choices and being more sustainable, you can start to see more competitive pricing, I would say.
Thank you.
Hope that answers.
Scale helps.
Scale.
I mean, Shaw is a good example because they do a lot and a lot of volume. And if you can find, and that's the catch, if you can find what you like in their product line, odds are you can find a pretty sustainable product. But it doesn't, what you like and what they produce doesn't always line up. That tends to be a challenge.
This is all Shaw. Fire Player in particular has their own, branding and marketing. And they're trying to market to a certain consumer profile. And so pricing reflects that, but there are definitely other manufacturers and other brands out there that are perhaps not marketing to a higher end clientele that also have, made in the US, 100% pre-consumer recycled content, shipped with low carbon emission vehicles and are in a lower price point. So, yeah, it's a matter of research, I think.
Well, actually, as a segue to that with tile and stone is, do you find that then that's also being requested to have, say, carbon infused cement? That's a tile? Is that much in demand or as part of the whole, the whole build out, the renovation that is? Or maybe it's not really in the equation of things, it's more about the windows, indoor air pollution, like deionizing the air.
I mean, we're seeing it on a larger scale. So when we're doing cast in place concrete, then,
Yeah.
we're looking at glass porcelains and there's a demand for that. Now the state is putting that into their specifications. It's now going to be standard requirement for large infrastructure projects and
Okay.
and large state funded projects. So we're looking for that as well. At a smaller scale, it's usually more about the sourcing and the, the reclamation of waste and being strategic about how the cuts are happening and rather than, because a lot of the material is just too thin or too small to really talk about a significant carbon savings in the piece of material itself, rather than in the process of producing or manufacturing.
Yeah, it seems like CLT is becoming bigger, don't
CLT is becoming pretty big. We're,
it? And hemp, but that's still, I know, with the hemp materials.
yeah. We personally haven't specified any hemp materials in a while, that I'm aware of. It's
Yeah.
possible that I'm still being selective.
That's the thing.
Well, with
Thank you.
MDF, I was
Yeah.
just reading about rice straw, so I'm interested. I haven't done any research on it yet, but I'm just waiting for his turn to talk. and see if I have any comments with it.
I won't, I'll give you.
Okay. Okay.
No, I knew I was last, so I tried to keep it a little bit brief, I guess. I'll just mention, so Newman Architects, as I mentioned, has been around for about 60 years. We're currently a firm of about 35 people. We're growing, which is exciting. Again, we've been great before. Multifamily housing. We do everything from, deeply affordable housing to market rate, but it's multifamily, so we usually don't do projects smaller than, 40 units or so. And then the other half of our firm is really around institutional work, primarily higher education. We're getting back into K through 12. We used to do a lot of that, and we're excited about getting back to that. And then we do a lot of offshoots. We used to do a lot of libraries. I wish more libraries would come back. they're harder and harder to pursue. But every project has a team, and I'm very glad that Rebecca went through the process that she went through with her firm. Because, similar to, in our own fashion, similar to Rebecca, we have our process, and as I said, part of my role now is to really integrate sustainability into every stage of that process as we think about the projects. But the projects I want to share with you today are actually 2 completed projects in 2 of those areas that we focus on. And I thought that they were worth a mention for a few reasons, which I'll just go over. I'm really glad that I'm going after Heather because she just showed an example of the project she just worked about and talked about its kind of regional relevance, right? And I think that one of the great things about Shoreline Grove, the project that I'm showing here, it was recently completed in Branford, Connecticut. And I'll get a little more into detail into specifications about it, but one of the great things about it is that I think it goes against the grain of what is still often considered sort of sustainable in architecture today. You're often looking at green roofs, you're often looking at sort of more modern looking buildings. There's a bit of tends to be a conflation of kind of contemporary style with sustainable goals. And I just want to make it clear, in case it wasn't, that those 2 things do not have to go together. And that I completely agree with Heather and Rebecca that reusing existing is by far the most sustainable way you can go when it comes to building. This is not a reused building, unfortunately. But what I will say is what this did replace is it replaced 3 small buildings that were really at the end of their life. And it was a little bit sad because they weren't even that old. But they were very deteriorated, in part because they weren't maintained, but in part because just the materials and the design of those buildings was not meant to last that long. And the hope is that this does a better job of that. And part of the reason that we believe it will is because it's a passive house certified project. And what that means is that it utilizes what began as a European strategy of a very tight envelope enclosure. And that very tight envelope enclosure creates what might seem like a conflict of interest in a hermetic environment internally. But what's wonderful about that is that as a very controlled environment, it's very comfortable. It maintains a relatively consistent temperature, and it doesn't require a ton of energy to heat and cool. And that's really the major factor here. So part of what I've been doing with projects, education is a big part of what we do, whether it's trying to bring our clients along with the story and informing them. But it's also informing, the industry that we work with and potential future clients about what we do and what we can do. So we're producing these sort of graphical, simple representations of the kind of integration of systems that's allowed the project to achieve what it's achieved. And some of these numbers might not mean a lot to some of the people in the room, but just to give you an example, I'm showing a blower door test here. So we're actually checking how sealed the envelope is. And the code in Connecticut right now, which is actually pretty progressive, I should say, for the United States, requires that number be at 0.25, and we're at 0.05. So we're literally 20% below what was the required minimum, which is already quite efficient. So essentially what this means is that this project will take significantly less electricity to heat and cool, and it's a completely electrical project, which is another thing that we're seeing increasingly in projects across a lot of different typologies, is that we're going electrical, right? The hope is that the grid will catch up, and the grid will also be relatively net zero, and by extension, anybody using electricity will be closer to net zero, right? We're a long ways away from that, but that's the kind of goal, and it's why you see wind energy and our solar farms and so on. It's all interconnected ultimately. As you can see, there's solar panels on the roof, so there's kind of a lot of things that are just commonly associated with sustainable design, and that's in there. These are very, very affordable units for senior residents, and it's been a very interesting process. I'd have to say that a lot of the things that were learned here, this was our first Passive House certified project in the office, the first that we completed, I should say. And it is the largest one in Connecticut and the second largest one in New England. So it's pretty large for a passive house project. And a lot of the complications that we found here was in the detailing and in working with contractors who could build things the way that we drew them to reach these kinds of results. And I have to say to your earlier questions that, we've found in a way that that we have the opposite problem with contractors, which is we often find contractors who are very willing to work with us. And they're very willing to say, yeah, we'll make this work without fully realizing what they're getting themselves into. And so it really takes a lot of sticking around and sometimes hand-holding and definitely sometimes pressure to make sure that they're accomplishing what they say that they're going to accomplish. And that's honestly not an accusation on contractors. I get it. A lot of them also want to come along on the journey, and they need a project like this to validate it for them. You need a lot of honesty about what you can and can't do so that you can get the project done. I just parenthetically have to say it's been very interesting to see a very large contractor that we do work with in New Haven doing one of the biggest first mass timber affordable housing projects in downtown New Haven. And they definitely did not have experience in that area. The stories have been very interesting.
So who doesn't, is it kind of like the training, dare I say, more from the architect? I mean, in terms of them having to listen carefully and intently.
Yeah, depending on, I mean, I'm not gonna say that we're the be all and end all of the knowledge on this at all. There's certainly people with better expertise than us. When it comes to something like Passive House, for example, they do need to get certified. Somebody on their team has to get certified to be able to see the project through certification. Mass timber is not the same because mass timber is not a certification, it's a material. And so the guidance often comes through the architect or through other consultants who are experts in that particular area of construction. So yeah, there is a lot of that, and hopefully there's also them talking to, you know, of theirs who've done that and gone through it and can learn something about that process.
So the mass timber is it then sustainable, somehow aligned or sustainable managed as a mass product?
Mass timber?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there's a lot of differing opinions on this. My opinion is that mass timber is definitely an incredibly sustainable product. If it's sourced correctly and if the source material comes from a location or a process that is replanting and regrowing that same material, then it's a very sustainable material. It also sequesters a decent amount of carbon. I don't know how that, I'd have to check how that actually compares on a 1-to-1 scale with, with concrete after it's done. I mean, that's not to digress too much, but that's the big thing is if you have an existing building that's made out of concrete, there's no question that you will sequester more carbon by not touching that concrete than you would by replacing it with mass timber. Like this, so you always have to kind of do your math and think about it. And I think there's a lot of pieces. So, to continue this, the next project I want to show is a completely different project. And the reason I think it's so fascinating, well, first of all, it's an educational institutional project from UConn. So everybody's tax dollars contributed to this. Thank you very much. This project was completed in 2016. It's LEED Gold certified. You can see it has a ton of different features that allow it to reach that certification. But what's fascinating about this is that almost not a single one of these is the same as it is on the project I just showed. And I think that that's a very relevant and important point here is that there are many different ways to achieve a sustainable goal, and not every solution will fit every problem. And so you really have to approach every problem in its own kind of way. We're trying to learn as much as we can from these projects and implement those things that we can every time again, but in reality, every time it's a different problem. And the solutions are different. But another fascinating, great thing about this is that it just relates to my story at the beginning. So I come from Israel, and if you've been to the Middle East, you may have potentially noticed that a ton of roofs in the Middle East have barrels on them with 2 solar panels. And I often used to get the question like, oh, everybody has solar energy in Israel. And I'm like, no, not really. They're just heating their water, right? It's a hot water heating system. Well, this is a Connecticut building, and those panels on the roof are not solar panels. Those are hot water systems. this building heats 30% of the hot water use in this building on its own, from its own roof, right? So that's saved energy that students are using every day, which was very interesting because, as just a lesson, I'm sure any of you who've looked into solar on your own home have found out that the amount of room you have and the orientation will make a big difference about whether solar is even worth it for you. And sure enough, there really isn't enough roof here, despite what it looks like, to really make a serious impact on the electrical use for this building with solar panels. But there was an opportunity to make a serious impact on heating hot water, and by extent, saving energy from heating hot water with electricity, right? So that was very interesting. Of course, to be LEED Gold certified, the building has to use a ton of low VOC, sustainably sourced materials. So there's a lot of different materials within this building that meet those requirements and specifications. More generally speaking, we have been AIA 2030 commitment signatories since 2019. We are currently joining the AIA Material Pledge, which Rebecca had mentioned. So we are now in the process of revisiting our specifications, revisiting our material libraries, and trying to really switch to material selections that are more sustainable as a baseline, as what we're starting with. Fortunately, over the years, a lot of the products we use have already caught up to that ahead of us. There's been a lot of pressure on companies and product manufacturers to be more sustainable. And so in many ways, we're a bit behind the curve in looking for sustainable materials because a lot of people are already offering those products. But it's still important to select the right products from the right manufacturers. And not every product that every manufacturer makes meets those requirements. What we're also finding, in full disclosure, as Rebecca and Heather mentioned, is that you have to do a lot of research. It's not super simple and easy sometimes to find a material that you want and you like that's also sustainably sourced, or recycled content, or low VOC, or whatever the constraint you're looking for might be. So we're working into figuring out how we're going to require our project architects and our project managers to actually go to sources and try to select a more sustainable option before they select another option. And that goes hand in hand with our having to, I hesitate to say fight, but it is a fight, and I mean that in the most positive way you can say it, with our clients every time, to try and accept that they can produce an efficient, an effective, a cost-effective product that is still of a higher grade of sustainability than it would be at a baseline where you just went with like the bottom dollar product on everything, right? And there's of course a lot of other benefits that come along with it in addition. So as I said, a lot of companies are already producing more sustainable options. It's becoming easier and easier to be able to offer a sustainable solution without having to break the bank to do it. Right? It can still be a challenge, but it's just becoming slowly a bit easier and a bit easier. For these large scale projects, a lot of it, as Rebecca had alluded, actually tends to come down to the most expensive items. So things like the HVAC units, right? So how are we heating and cooling the building? Heat pumps, trying to go ground source is more expensive than air source, but even an air source heat pump is better than older systems. We're now starting to work on our first geothermal project, which is an independent geothermal project. So a lot of the geothermal projects in Connecticut right now have been working on a district concept, which makes a lot more sense for geothermal. For those who aren't familiar with it, the concept of geothermal is basically using the constant temperature of the earth below ground to either heat or cool a liquid that runs through pipes, so that then you can use that temperature, and heating or cooling it more takes less energy than if you were starting at a lower temperature, if that makes sense. So, so we're looking at a project that's trying to do that on its own site, and geothermal to be effective takes space. So it's not always easy to do.
They're
We need a
getting
lot of
better at it.
foundations. They're getting better.
They're getting
Absolutely.
better, they're doing it in the city now in the basements of these buildings because they have, they can put them in horizontally. And in a constrained pattern rather than really deep
Yeah.
down.
And so, the project you're talking about, district, do you mean like community solar, community geothermal, like?
Yes, sourcing geothermal from a lot of different projects. Often the starting one needs to be, just by virtue of people's skepticism and the cost, it needs to be some larger space that accommodates that. We're seeing it a lot on the institutional side,
Right.
where campuses that were previously working on steam generation, right? So they had a power plant on campus that they were then funneling energy to all these different buildings on campus. And now they're looking for the next generation of that, and geothermal makes a lot of sense. But it makes a lot of sense because they're going to be impacting a lot of buildings. So that initial investment is going to pay off a lot faster. But like you said, it's becoming capable of doing that on a much smaller scale now. And so it's suddenly becoming maybe not quite affordable, but interesting for individual projects.
Yeah.
It's good to have something on the table.
So a lot less certainly, but with the residential side, for sure, it's much more of a commercial.
Well, they
Not
are
just a-
doing it, actually, I can talk a little bit about this, because we were trying to get in a school in Greenwich. There is community solar being installed in Massachusetts, I think it's Boston, where it's a block of homes, and they have common heat source through geothermal.
Yeah.
I think that's the.
There's
future.
businesses now coming up, that are, it used to be maybe one, now there's a couple. That are really trying to sell clients on the idea, which they're not wrong, that. While one rooftop might not produce a sufficient amount of electricity for it to really be impactful, 30 rooftops do. And so as long as one person is managing 30 rooftops, they can use all that energy to benefit all the people with those rooftops, right? So, I mean, I'm simplifying the concept, but yeah, that's something that's being discussed. Again, maybe less on a residential scale, but I'm sure if it's not already on a it's coming.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. Get your neighborhood together, everybody gets solar.
Well, geothermal too, you're not reliable on the weather, which is,
Yeah.
to me, big plus. It's not land intrusive, right? Because it's right in the building. It's not
Yeah.
outside.
The last one of these sessions that was hosted here, if I remember correctly, Trillium Architects was saying that they're no longer promoting geothermal because it's just problematic or not efficient enough or something like that. And instead they're doing the air source.
Well, on a multiple cold, less than 0 degree day, you're not gonna be able to heat a 10,000 square foot house. If you're nice high-end clients, home, 10 days in, it's like 50 degrees in the house. You have to have supplemental. You can't rely on that a lot, at least in the Northeast. Maybe there's other places that we'd be
Well,
talking
if
about.
you had like mini splits and through the different rooms.
Well,
I mean,
air source heat pumps, it's interesting you mentioned air source heat pumps. I'm not sure exactly what they said, but although they're becoming incredibly more efficient than they were,
Yeah.
they also, for our climate, are gonna struggle with the reality of really low temperatures. Because once the incoming air is below a certain temperature, they still require more energy to heat it up, right? I'm honestly not a particularly strong advocate of either, as one is better than the other. Because to go back to the previous point, I think it's a different solution is appropriate for different situations. But it's very interesting to hear that.
No, yeah, because I was, very interested in geothermal, until that session where they were like,
Mhm.
geothermal is not gonna work. And they're doing quite, luxury residential units, and they were, the question did come up, that what about the comfort level during like super cold? And they were like, it's been totally fine, it's been good enough. Sadly, climate change is changing the weather around here a little bit, but we are also in a heavily bedrock area. So the cost of geothermal around here
Yeah,
is
the cost.
probably significantly more than it might be somewhere flatter, I guess, or.
You can drill shallower wells with skips, but yeah, that's. You need to look at it on a project by project basis, and figure out if it's gonna work, but there's a lot of exciting technologies out there. And even geothermal, interestingly enough, is improving, so they might absolutely be right. But it also may be that 5 years from now, 3 years from now, it flips again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yes.
I guess this can go to all of you. When you're looking into your materials, and like you said, research is, there's no stopping it, you have to. But when you go on the websites for each company, you know, everybody likes to be like sustainable, it's their favorite word to use, and there's really no standard that I've been able to find. With like AIA 2030, I haven't read it yet, so it may be that I have to read through it. What are the standards? Like, you know, you got, everything's being said that like, we need it to be sustainable, like what Joe Schmo could just be like, I make something sustainable because I recycle my water bottles that my employees are drinking out of, like. Where does sustainability come into play? Is there a certain CO2 level that they're expecting? Like everyone loves the word fully net zero. But coming from a manufacturing background, which a lot of you guys are talking about, like I owned an architectural glass company. To get to fully net zero for a manufacturing company is very difficult. Like kudos to Anderson, that is phenomenal. What are the standards that you guys are expecting out of a company for them to be able to actually tote the word sustainable and mean something?
And can I just add that there's a difference between net zero and just carbon zero?
Yeah.
Net zero, you can buy your way to.
Yeah, you can buy your point. But like, what would you guys consider when you go on a website and you look? Every website has the word sustainable now. Every website likes to say it. Where do we look? What do we look for to prove it? Like, I would love it if, you know, I go to the grocery store and I see that USDA organic stamp. And it means a lot of different things. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but I know it's better than, you know, the Walmart brand. Is there a certification, a stamp, anything that we can look for that's like, hey, they're legit? They're not just toting a word around. They're actually putting their money where their mouth is. Because being sustainable costs them a lot of money. So is there something we can look for as designers that lets us know on their website if they mean it?
I could just briefly, I think a lot of it goes back to like, you know, there are so many ways to skin that cat.
Yeah.
We personally, through just our pursuit and the AIA material pledge,
Yeah.
we look for, the third party, declaration, which is the HPD and EPDs are two of the well-known ones. Which is HPD stands for Health Product Declaration, EPD is Environmental Product Declaration, and those are basically like the nutrition label for a product, so it really breaks down the environmental impact, but basically what's in the product. There are some other ones that address, for instance, the red list chemicals. If there's a red list chemical in the product, which are toxic chemicals, that's another something else that we would look for. You can't even get a declaration, product declaration if you have a red list chemical in your product. So those are some, but
Partial
FSC
red.
certified, FSC certified wood.
yeah, and then there are the certifications themselves. Yeah.
So every type of product that's made out there for building use is going to have their own different certifications.
Yeah.
So it depends on what you're looking for. Like if you're looking for a lighting fixture, they're going to have their own certifications. If you're looking for furniture, they will have their own set of
So
things.
pretty much just keep an eye to make sure that they are third party certified and that they've gone through at least some type of process that proves.
Right,
Yeah.
to vet,
Again,
that they-
a lot of the manufacturers who are actually keeping track of
Yeah.
their progress are going to have something like what ASID puts out, like they will have their annual summaries of like how
Right on
how they're reaching their goals that they have set up for themselves. And so that will tell you whether the company is really committed to making the product the way that they're promising to make, or whether they're just like greenwashing it.
Yeah,
and just-
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Little
Well,
smiley face on here.
Yeah, a little green leaf and all.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's key. I mean, speaking of HPDs and UPDs, you know, we're also looking, for example, at products that have the declare label, which is basically just a standardized format of that.
Okay.
But I think it's important to note that getting a declare label on a product is expensive.
Yeah.
It's a recurring
Yeah.
annual expense that you
Oh,
do.
yeah.
I would argue, at least right now, because I'm a bit earlier in the material world. It would be more important to me, given that I'm not guaranteed to find the type of product I want with a declare label or an HPD or. It'd be more important to me that the product manufacturer has a level of transparency and they're willing to talk about it. This is what we do, this is where we source from. And with a level of confidence about this singular product, that comes for free. I mean, you have to do the research.
Right.
But you're not paying somebody to do that. And it's absolutely possible that somebody who meets you or knows you or wants to use your product will accept that if
I
you
no
have
longer
the
have the
information.
product, I sold it.
Okay.
I sold it off to a larger,
Yeah.
but one of my problems was the coming down the pipeline from the architects in Manhattan. Are you this certified yet? Are you that certified yet? I'd be like, no, I'll do it. We were very green. But again, the amount of money. So like, the reason I know, it's like, okay, well, and I like what you're saying. People would call me and I would explain to them, I wasn't certified anything. But now that I'm on this end of the side again, it's like, well, how quick can I find out if they're BSing or not? You know, and so the EPD, HP, that's awesome.
Well, this has been
Thank you.
excellent. Thank you so much. We're kind of over our time now, but this has been, again, really high quality, really robust discussion across a myriad of levels with built-in design. So, thank you everyone for your time and